Ryan O'Shaughnessy's life was amazing. At least that's what he told anyone who was stupid enough to ask about it. But jokes aside, he had every reason to be happy with his lot in life. His parents, Bridie and Mick O'Shaughnessy, loved him, as did his fiancée, Colleen Murphy. Although their sharing an apartment together before their holy matrimony had annoyed some of the older members of their families, his parents didn't mind, and Father Kenneth, the parish priest, was a wise enough old bird to know when to hang on and when not to. They were saving up money for a down payment on a house a couple miles from the part of town where they now lived. The house they were looking at had to be absolutely stunning, with amazing appliances, well-finished rooms, and front and back garden areas that looked as good as they did in House Beautiful, Fine Gardening Magazine, and Home Gardening Magazine. Ryan intentionally chose the phrase, "will be an absolutely stunning home," because although Ryan and Colleen have booked their new home, construction has not yet begun and probably won't start for another 6 months or so. All of the photos were created by artificial intelligence. All seemed to be well in Ryan and Colleen's world until someone broke the dam, or perhaps it would be more accurate to say that the dam broke something, but more on that later. Ryan worked for a large office management software company. If you've been in business to any degree, small or large, you've probably had to use software developed and implemented by Mull Computer Unternehmen, or MCU as it was better known. MCU was in the business of supplying large companies with so-called white-label software, accounting packages, communications systems, management systems, virtual reality systems, human resources systems, and the like. At the same time, the client could pretend that it was its own software. So MCU charged more than their competitors, but clients were always happy to pay top dollar. One of the benefits for Ryan, besides the fantastic paycheck, was that he didn't have to spend time tied to a desk, if you can call it that, and could work from anywhere. That included from the apartment he and his fiancée rented together. Due to a delay at the dentist, Ryan was brushing and polishing his teeth late in the morning, so he decided to call the office, tell them he'd be in later, and swing by the house for a snack. He didn't inform Colleen of the change in his plans, as she had told him she would be with his mother all day in a small town 100 miles away to look at sketches of wedding dresses. When Ryan opened the apartment door and walked into the living room, he got a huge shock when he saw his fiancée and his mother having sex. When they realized they were no longer alone in the room, if I may say so, I feel myself starting to sour. They were stunned silent, looking at Ryan as if they hoped he would disappear from their sight, but they both knew that wasn't going to happen. They began to quickly cover themselves with random articles of clothing and pillows from the large couch they had been indulging in passion on just a few minutes ago. "I'm not leaning on these pillows anymore," Ryan thought to himself as he tried to keep himself from getting coffee at the dentist's office. "Mom, Colin, what the hell is going on? I didn't know you guys were lesbians." Bridie shook her head. "Colleen isn't a lesbian per se. I guess you could call her a bi-lover, and I've been helping her explore that side of her personality, sort of." Ryan frowned. "That's bullshit, Mom. You were helping my fiancé cheat on me. That's what you were doing. And since when did you become unconventional, Mom?" "I didn't cheat on you, Ryan," Colin clarified, stepping into the conversation. "Like your mom said, she was just helping me deal with my feelings." "What feelings? The feelings that made you want to cheat on me?" "But that's not cheating. Not really. Because if you caught me with a man, well, yes, that would be cheating. But I would never do that, Rye. I love you too much to do that. But not enough to stop you from having sex with my mother. And anyway, exploring that side of your personality? What if you realize that you like girls and that you don't want me in your life anymore?" "I wouldn't do that. I love you too much, honey, you know that. In fact, I don't know any of that right now." He turned to his mother. "What would Daddy say if he found out what you were up to with my ex-fiancé?" She shrugged. "Your father and I have an arrangement. He knows I'm bisexual and he doesn't mind my silly adventures, meaning nothing in the scheme of things, As long as they don't interfere with our marriage, and the basic things that affect us. Ryan happened to notice that the look on his now ex-fiance's face was suddenly replaced with an expression of hurt and anger when she realized that Bridie thought she was just a silly little hobby and an unimportant event. He then realized that those involved in the affair had drastically different views of their connection and what they expected from her. Without another word, Ryan glanced at a random table by the door, grabbed the 2 cell phones he saw there, slipped them into his pockets, and, ignoring their shrill protests, walked out of the apartment, closing the door tightly but quietly behind him. Without their phones, they wouldn't be able to call his father and tell him about themselves, and although there was a phone point in the apartment, the last time it had been connected to the telephone network was probably during the Bush 1 or Bush 2 administration. He took the elevator to the 2nd floor, and once out of the building, called his father. "Hey, Dad. I just had a hell of a shock. I came back to the apartment unexpectedly and found Mom and Colin having sex in the same bed." He heard his father gasp in horror. "Mom told me that you and her have an open relationship and that you don't mind her having sex with women. Is that true?" His father sighed. "No, not really. Instead of coming to our house and risking your mother trying to blindside us, I'll meet you in half an hour at Monty's sports bar. Is that okay with you, Rye?" "Sure, Dad. I'm not expected at the office for a while, so Monty's will suit me just fine." When Ryan parked the car in the lot and walked into Monty's, the screens were showing European soccer matches, and his father was sitting at one of the back counters with a pitcher of beer and 2 pint glasses on the table. He pointed at them. "Proper imperial pint glasses and a pitcher of Goose Island IPA. I thought about whiskey, but I know we're both driving, so I decided against it." Ryan sat down, poured himself a drink, and said, "I got home and found them both having sex on the couch in the living room. Then Mom told me some bullshit that you were okay with it. Is that true, Dad?" Mick sipped his drink thoughtfully. "Not really, Ryan. Not really. Years ago, I discovered that your mother was getting a little too close to one of the female employees. In fact, like you, I caught them having sex. It almost led to our breakup, but she explained that she had needs that I, as a man, could not fulfill. You were very young, and since I didn't want to destroy our family, I decided to stay and work something out. We ended up drawing up a prenup that allowed your mother to have girlfriends, but stipulated that they wouldn't be anyone we knew, that they wouldn't be from our neighborhood or town, and that there would be no long-term relationships between Bridie and the other women. In my opinion, damn Colleen, your fiancé has completely violated our post-nuptial agreement. Can you forgive Colleen for her act?" Ryan shook his head. "No, Dad. Absolutely not. If she ruined my life by sleeping with my own mom before we got married, what's to stop her from sleeping with other women or even other men when we get married? I understand how Mom managed to trap you and get you to sign a prenup as a kid because you needed to think about me. But would you have married her if you knew then what you know now?" Mick shook his head sadly. "I doubt I would have married her, to be honest. I'm so angry with her. She ruined our marriage, and now she's ruined the relationship between you and Colleen. Yeah, but to be honest, I can't escape the thought that Mom did me a favor in some way. After all, she showed Colleen to be a flighty, unfaithful little bitch. You know we were planning on having a big family? What if I'd given her 6 kids and then caught her cheating? Would the kids even be mine? That would be so much worse than finding out now and ending up moving on, you know?" "I agree, Ryan. You're right. Can't you forgive Colleen? What about your mother? Would you forgive her?" "What, for being the bitch who stole my fiancé from me?" "Not for the foreseeable future, no." "Will you forgive your mom?" "Not exactly. I already forgave her once, and I guess she threw it back in my face again. Divorce, as the prenup says, seems to be the only way out if I want to keep any self-respect." They finished their pitcher, decided not to take another, and at the door of the establishment they shook hands, hugged, and parted ways. Ryan walked back to the empty apartment and put the phones back where they belonged. Although logically he knew that the apartment was still the same, it seemed like some ruined, dirty place that he couldn't define. But he knew it definitely was. He knew he couldn't live here anymore. And as for the two crooks, they were nowhere to be seen, and that pleased Ryan, because while he didn't like confrontation by nature, he was so worked up that he was bound to run into them, and he realized with surprise that he couldn't guarantee it wouldn't escalate into a physical confrontation. He packed up his clothes and belongings and was able to move into the spare room of Danny, his good friend, who, having known the family for years, was shocked at how things had turned out. That night over hot sweet tea, Danny's mother had come over from England and instilled in the relatives the benefits of hot sweet tea. Danny explained that while he had always liked Ryan's mother, he had always felt a strange vibe coming from her. Nothing definite, but it always seemed to him that there was something behind the facade. The next day, Colleen sent Ryan a letter of apology. "Dear Ryan, I don't even know where to begin, because I know that words alone won't fix what I broke. But I owe you a sincere and heartfelt apology for the pain I've caused you. I betrayed your trust, and there is no excuse for my actions. I know I hurt you deeply, and I am very, very sorry. I was selfish and let you down in the worst way possible. You gave me your love, your devotion, and your heart, and I shattered it. I can't imagine the pain and disappointment you are feeling right now, and it breaks my heart to know that I am the cause of your pain, especially since I had sex with your own mother. I want you to know that my actions do not reflect how I feel about you. I care about you more than anything, and I made the biggest mistake of my life betraying her. I was reckless, rash, and cowardly, and I will forever regret my choices. I know that saying, 'I'm sorry,' can't undo what I did, especially since it involves your mother, like I said. I understand if you can't forgive me or if you need time to process all of this. I just want you to know that I am deeply ashamed of my behavior, and I intend to work on myself, whatever the outcome. I don't expect you to start trusting me again overnight, and I realize that that trust may never return. I can only hope that in time you will realize how sincerely sorry I am. Please take as much time as you need to decide what's best for you, and if you ever want to talk or need anything from me, I'm here. I understand if you need space, and I will respect whatever decision you make. Again, I'm really, really sorry for what I did. You deserved so much better than this, and I'm sorry I can't go back and fix the hurt I caused. All I can do now is express my deep regret and take full responsibility for my actions. Also, please tell Mick how sorry I am for my role in the destruction of his marriage. Sincerely, with all my love, Colin." He quickly replied, "Dear Colleen, thank you for apologizing. You ruined our relationship. You ruined my relationship with my mother. I will never forgive you or her. Goodbye, Ryan. P.S. We'll split our shit and our lawyers will sort it out." Bridie and Colleen were making matters worse by the two of them sharing the apartment Ryan had vacated. Neither of them could see that it was exacerbating the shit they'd set up, or maybe they just didn't care. Bridie, however, was outraged that her husband continued to divorce using the prenup as a basis. Meanwhile, Ryan, using his employer's health insurance, was in therapy. As for Mick, he just went on with his life, sustained by the occasional pint of Guinness, a few shots of Dew Irish whiskey, and long conversations with Father Kenneth, his parish priest. A few months later, Colin and Mick appeared before Judge Peter Parker in divorce court. He was a quiet guy who always wore two badges on his lapel, one to commemorate his service in the U.S. Marine Corps, and the other, on the other side, was a Spider-Man badge, a reference to his name, Peter Parker's alter ego. Mick was represented by Molly Patricks, and Colin was represented by Lucy Jones. "Your Honor," Molly said, "my client, Mr. Mick O'Shaughnessy, is divorcing his wife, Bridie O'Shaughnessy, based on her infidelity with his son Ryan's former fiancée, Colleen Murphy." Molly saw her opponent's attorney hiss. While I know that adultery is not normally grounds for divorce in this state, we are filing for divorce on the grounds of infidelity because Mr. and Mrs. O'Shaughnessy signed a prenuptial agreement that provided for divorce on the grounds of infidelity under certain circumstances. I would like to call Mr. O'Shaughnessy as the first witness. Mick was sworn in, and the questioning began. Mr. O'Shaughnessy, how long have you and Mrs. O'Shaughnessy been married? 26 years. Has it been a happy marriage? A good marriage? He shrugged before answering. To some extent, yes, it was. However, when our son Ryan was a toddler, we ran into a serious stumbling block. You see, I caught my wife in bed with another man, her coworker, a woman. What happened then, please? Can you describe what happened? I was upset, devastated, really. I had just caught the woman I loved more than anyone in the world cheating on me. I asked her if I had failed her in any way. She explained that she is bisexual and sometimes wants or needs sex with a woman to feel complete, whole. Although it was illogical, I felt I had failed her in some way. But I knew I didn't want to divorce her because I still love her. I love my son, and I didn't want to be a part-time father. What happened then, Mr. O'Shaughnessy? What did you do afterward? We went through relationship counseling, and she was able to assure me that she still loved me and wanted to continue our marriage. After a while, we came to an agreement, backed up by a formal prenuptial agreement, whereby she could have lovers, but not ones we both knew, not from our immediate circle of friends. Ideally, if she would take lovers, they would be from far away, preferably from a neighboring town or even farther away if possible, and certainly not to have any romantic relationships with them. Molly addressed the court. Your Honor, the post-nuptial agreement is presented to the court as Exhibit Number 1. It states that Mrs. O'Shaughnessy will be allowed to have casual sexual partners, but if she takes a lover known to both of them, from their close social circle or close neighborhood, or takes a lover on a long-term basis, the marriage will be declared null and void. She paused briefly before continuing. I would like to call a second witness, Ryan O'Shaughnessy. Ryan was sworn in, and his questioning began. Ryan, I realize this is going to be painful for you, but could you explain what happened when you came home to the apartment you shared with your then-fiancé? I came home unexpectedly after going to the dentist. My then-fiancé told me that she and my mom would be at a wedding dress store in a town about 100 miles away, so I knew no one would be home. Anyway, to my shock, horror, and embarrassment, my fiancé and my mother were having sex in the living room of our apartment. My mom told me that my father was okay with that sort of thing, so there was no point in me telling him. What happened next, Ryan? I met with my father, and he explained to me about the post-nuptial agreement and told me that she had basically lied to me about everything they had. How did you feel when you found out your mother and your fiancé had sex together? He shrugged. Honestly shocked. The two people I loved most in the world, aside from my father, betrayed me in the most horrible way. I dreamed of a happy marriage with Colleen, of raising a large family of children in a big house with dogs and cats and maybe a pony for our daughters. Now my dreams have turned into a nightmare, and they died in an instant. How are you feeling now, Ryan? He wiped his eyes. Not so good, to be honest. I'm in therapy and not dating. Truth be told, I'd rather be gnawing on broken bottles than dating right now. Yeah, I can see that, Ryan. Sorry it happened to you. No further questions, Your Honor. Lucy Jones declined the opportunity to cross-examine as she realized that nothing good would come of it. Then it was Lucy Jones's turn. She called Colleen O'Shaughnessy to the stand. Mrs. O'Shaughnessy, did you agree to the prenuptial agreement presented to the court by Mr. O'Shaughnessy? Yes, I agreed to it. But he wasn't real. I never intended it to be valid. Then why did you sign it if it was valid? Because I loved him. I wanted us to stay together as a couple, as a family with little Ryan, who was just over 2 years old at the time. I see. Good, honorable goals. Who drew up the agreement? It was a lawyer friend of mine. She said she would draw it up for me and sign it at the notary she uses. I was worried about what would happen if he tried to act on the agreement, but she explained to me that the agreement would not be enforceable in court, that it was only drawn up to give him the peace of mind he craved. So you signed this post-nuptial agreement to soothe your husband's bruised ego when you had lovers from time to time? Yes, that's right. No further questions, Your Honor. Wait there, please, Mrs. O'Shaughnessy, Judge Peter Parker barked. You are to remain for questioning Ms. Patricks. Molly proceeded with the questioning. She was not pleased. Mrs. O'Shaughnessy, you had lovers, your husband caught you, and in order to keep your husband, you lied and possibly committed perjury by putting your name on a signed post-nuptial agreement to give your husband a false sense of security and make him believe something that wasn't necessarily true? I suppose you can look at it from that perspective if you want to. It's not a matter of what I'd like, Mrs. O'Shaughnessy. It's the truth. You told your husband that you would only have sexual partners from among women not known to you or your husband, not even from your neighborhood. When did that change? Bridie frowned. I don't know what you mean. Your son caught you having intercourse with his fiancée in the apartment they shared. Colin was known to you and your husband, so that violated a pretty important part of your post-nuptial agreement, didn't it? Bridie replied, I know what you mean, but it was the first time. Wasn't it, Mrs. O'Shaughnessy? Was it the first time you broke the agreement? Or have you had other lovers who failed the test of the marriage contract you signed? And remember, you are under oath. But that doesn't matter. That prenup is invalid. My friend told me so. I see, Mrs. O'Shaughnessy. It shows that you have broken the agreement. Only you know to what extent you have broken it. Local mistresses, even men. But the crowning achievement of your dirty, lying life is that you allowed yourself to be caught having sexual relations with your poor son's fiancée. And yet you keep rambling on about how the prenup you signed is invalid? But my friend told me it was invalid, Colleen shouted, visibly upset. At this point, Judge Parker intervened. Mrs. O'Shaughnessy, your friend has misled you. While this is not the most carefully drafted post-nuptial agreement I have ever seen, it is certainly not invalid. One question. Was this lawyer friend of yours a friend with benefits, by any chance? I can see by the look on your face that she was. She lied to you. Why, I have no idea. However, I must tell you that the post-nuptial agreement is valid, and that as a result you dissolved your marriage yourself. But my friend told me that won't hold up in court. Your friend has no standing in my court. If your friend had standing in my court, why wouldn't she testify for you or represent you before me? Your Honor, Lucy Jones interjected, is there any way to save the marriage? Counseling, perhaps? A renegotiation of the agreement? Judge Parker shrugged. I really don't see the point. Mrs. O'Shaughnessy broke her vows at the wedding, then she broke the prenuptial agreement. So what makes you think she's going to agree to abide by a third agreement? That she's capable of honoring it? No, that doesn't satisfy me. I declare the marriage dissolved and the provisions of the post-nuptial agreement take effect. Judge Parker then turned to Lucy Jones. Ms. Jones, do you know who gave your client such bad, ill-conceived advice? No, Your Honor, I don't know. I'm glad to hear that. The divorce has become final and the provisions of the prenuptial agreement are in effect. Bridie turned to Mick and exclaimed, You'll never find another woman like me. Mick laughed and replied, Sounds good to me. Bye, Felicia. Bridie began to sob, grabbing onto Lucy Jones as she stumbled off the court. She had put everything on the line, her marriage, her relationship with her son's relationship with his fiancée. In that moment, she blamed herself. Eventually, as people do, she began to blame her ex-husband, her former lawyer lover who had steered her down the wrong path, her own lawyer, Lucy Jones, and even Colleen, though she still shared Colleen's bed. Yeah, it sounds like Bridie is a pretty shitty person. As for Ryan, he was attending counseling. It was quite a long process for Ryan, as he had a lot of things to sort out. Eventually, his therapist said, "Ryan, it's not true that your mother had an affair with Colleen because she was bisexual. The reason she had an affair with Colleen was not because of her sexuality, but because your mother is a cheater. By the way, most bisexual people don't cheat. I certainly can't diagnose your mother. After all, I'm a psychologist, not a psychic. But from what you've told me about your mother's relationship dynamics, how she cheated on your father, was cheated out of her own postmarital contract, and decided to steal your fiancé. I'm pretty sure she's a narcissist with elements of impulsivity. She clearly believes she's entitled to special treatment, with an inflated sense of self-worth, convinced she deserves more than your father or life can give her. Of course, as I said, I can't make an accurate diagnosis as to her personality, since thankfully I'll probably never meet her. But if she ever wants a tattoo, she should consider getting an NPD tattoo on her forehead as a warning to everyone she meets in her life. In the last session, the therapist gave Ryan some techniques to help him cope when, as the therapist said, shit gets too real to deal with. Ryan moved in with his father for a while until he could get his own apartment. Mick found that even at his age, his circle of acquaintances was much deeper and warmer than he had realized. Ryan was able to attend training sessions at work and realized that one of his fellow students was the most beautiful and captivating woman he'd ever seen, looking like something between Kate Beckinsale and Sandra Bullock. Yes, they're dating, and things are working out just fine. What about Colin? As for Colin, why was she sharing her apartment and her life with Bridie? Psychological self-preservation. After all, if she cut Bridie out of her life, losing Ryan as a fiancé would be a total loss. However, their relationship was never 100% because, as the old song goes, cheaters who need cheaters are the loneliest people in the world. Who cares about them, right? Friday night plans. I turned in to determine to spend that Friday night however I thrilled, beer in hand, couch underneath me, and a repeat of the 2009 Longhorns game already in the queue. The week had drained the life from me. I'd worked days pouring concrete in 95-degree warmth, cursing the sun and a broken air compressor. The only aspect that kept me going became the wish of doing not anything at all around the weekend. But Lena had different plans. A change of plans. She got here out of the bedroom in a purple get-dressed that flashed as though defying fate. Not a nice sundress, no longer something informal. This changed into a decent dress, flashy, the kind that did now not beg for interest. It shouted it. Her makeup was carried out so her eyes slashed more, her lips plumper, as even though she become headed for the theater. I had never seen her get dressed up for me in years. At least, no longer for me. "We're going out," she declared, achieving for her jewelry on the nightstand. "Max instructed me he'd heard of this new vicinity downtown. Signal, supposed to be wild like New York or L.A. sense. Come on, Alex, it'll be K for us." I glared at her from the couch, in paintings pants and a grimy tank top, already prone to losing the fight earlier than I'd uttered a word. "Uh-huh. I changed into having a night in," I stated, rubbing my eyes. "You promised me this night you'll let me get some sleep." "You've forgotten a way to stay," she snapped, clicking her heels. "We both have. We used to be spontaneous. We used to be amusing. Remember that?" The manner she stated it, seeking to believe it more than me, hurt greater. I capitulated. Truly, I just did not have the electricity to combat with her over it. And perhaps, simply perhaps, she became right. Maybe this evening out would shatter something we're building between us the previous couple of months. Entering the mistake. But as soon as we entered the door of Signal, I knew I had made a mistake. The air turned into raucous, no longer raucous, deafening. Walls pounded with crimson and blue lights, every surface reflecting a person else's definition of an amazing time. Shoulder to shoulder, human beings danced, screaming over the music as if it had been their remaining night on this planet. This wasn't Austin. Hell, this wasn't anywhere I changed into alleged to be anymore. Our common organization was already at a nook desk. Max become in seventh heaven, bellowing, gesticulating, more than one beers beforehand. Sarah hugged Lena tightly, the type of hug that made me feel like a stranger in my own world. There have been others, too. Faces from in advance reunions, co-people of Lena's, perhaps, human beings she kissed on the cheek and welcomed with easy camaraderie. The second we entered, Lena changed into electric. She glowed as if a switch had been flipped, giggling harder than vital, tracing her arms along the palms of others as she talked, tossing her hair as though it were all overall performance. I held a glass in my hand, smiled where I was informed to, nodded in which I turned into alleged to, however couldn't shake the feeling in the bottom of my stomach. The one that tells you which you're in the middle of something that used to be yours, and now you are only a spectator. The unspoken divide. Every time I attempted to leap into the verbal exchange, Lena cut me off. Not rudely, now not exactly, however firmly enough to make it obvious that I turned into no longer the visitor of honor. She cracked a funny story on my work boots, kidded about having just lower back from the website online. Everyone laughed. So did I. But it turned into like swallowing glass down a knife. And then the telephone. It buzzed as soon as in her bag. Then again, a couple of minutes later. And once more. Each time she pulled it out, glanced on the screen, smiled, one of these quiet, hidden smiles, and then stuck it returned in her bag without a word. Never as soon as did she let me see the screen. Never once did she tell me who it became. Just caught it returned in her bag like the whole thing become first class. But it became something. We'd had fights before, any couple, dumb couples, over plates, over now not listening, over snapping too rapid. But this night became one of a kind. I wasn't even home. She changed into appearing, and I become just the dumb asshole who become gambling the dull husband that she had to drag in the back of her. Sometime, around nighttime maybe, who was aware of, I began to music out. Not on reason. I simply looked at. My body stayed at the table, however my mind became some other place, probably nonetheless at the couch wherein it had stayed. I sipped on a beer that I didn't need, looking to do not forget, whilst Lena had rested her hand on mine in all and sundry else's view. The toast. That's whilst she stood, glass aloft, smile already in region. She clanged a fork at the rim and cleared her throat. "I'd like to toast," she stated. The conversation stopped. I leaned in a bit, no longer knowing what to anticipate subsequent. "To my husband," she persevered, a glint in something I couldn't pretty put my finger on. Alex, the most patient human being in the world, the kind of man who by no means says a phrase after I'm 10 mins overdue, or when I turn at the ultimate second, or after I take an hour getting dressed. He simply waits, always waits. Laughter. Max applauded. Someone whistled. Lena spoke to me over her shoulder, nevertheless protecting onto her glass. "Seriously, though, it's like being married to a monk every now and then, so zen, so calm, like he's reflected his manner through our whole marriage." Laughter. But now not mine. I didn't move, didn't say a aspect. I surely glared at her, then the rest of them, all of whom glared again at me like I become the punchline to a funny story they'd already heard. The realization. A minute or two before that, I had excused myself and stepped outside, wherein I wanted air. The ringing, the lighting, the thud of the bass coming from internal, the ring of her cell phone nonetheless ringing in her purse. It all just have become too much. Then it arrived. A text from her. Chill. It's just a nighttime out. Don't be dramatic. And in that instant, it all clicked. The get dressed, the phone, the manner she floated all nighttime lengthy like I wasn't even there. That toast, it wasn't toasting me, it turned into humbling me, displaying for all of us the real her now, and I wasn't. The breaking point. I ought to have left then. Should have hopped in a cab and abandoned her there to discover her own display without anybody to observe her. But I didn't. Maybe I took her out. Maybe I took her out to witness the ache for herself. Maybe I changed into clinging to a few vivid desire that she'd look at me and see the person she'd married. The man who gave every ounce of himself to make her glad. She did not. And that became, whilst it struck me. She wasn't regretful that I changed into hurt. She relished it. She wanted me to squirm, wanted me to keep in mind that she still held the playing cards. I eventually back in, but I become now not the same. No longer. And neither becomes she. It wasn't just D. It wasn't just D. There were others too. Emojis, pictures, and texts that didn't exactly amount to anything in the mind. But I didn't do that. I stayed with D, the man she'd been speaking to in the bar, the man who'd been given the special smile, the laugh that was mine. I read over their messages that day of the day, him asking her to tell him what she wore, her taking a picture of herself, a selfie, not naked, but not something you send a guy you do not know either, his babying her, her reply. You know who I wish I was with tonight. I fell ill. I scrolled on, photos of the two of them together. A company event that I was unaware of, one that she let me know was a company event. A concert I had thought she was attending with Sarah, the tickets I had purchased. A hotel reservation, charged on our joint card. I pulled out my bank app. There it was, black and white. She finally emerged from downstairs, sweats on, arms crossed, furious. Better? She asked. No, I said. But I'm done pretending I don't see. I did not scream. I did not rage. I did not throw things or demand that she explain to me why she'd done it. I couldn't. I was above all of that. Something in me had been shut off, like the fuse had been pulled and removed all of the feeling from it. I want answers, I stated. She finally sat. Not too close, not in the other room either. She was weary, not guilty. Weary. Like the mask that she wore had started to crack, and keeping it together so it didn't shatter was just too tiring. It wasn't premeditated, she said. It just sort of happened. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so trite. Don't try to insult me. She flinched but didn't revise it. I didn't mean it to go this far. Bullshit, I said to her, not loud, hard. You planned a weekend with him. You lied. You spent our money. She gazed at her hands. How long? She hesitated. A few months. Tell the truth. She did not answer right away. Then, since January. January. 8 months of lying. Of waking up next to me. Of telling me she was tired, busy, not in the mood. 8 months of staring me in the face and lying to me that she was still my wife. Why? I demanded. Because I had to know. She shrugged. I don't know. Things were getting dull, routine. I felt like I was fading away. So your solution was to cheat on me? I didn't sleep with him, okay? It began with texts, and then drinks, and... Don't, I cut her off. Don't walk me through it. Quiet between us. I had shaken my head on the couch, looking for that part of me that still didn't get it right. I couldn't. I wasn't even sure if I had that part anymore. Do you say you're married to him? I asked. She hesitated. Yeah. Do you say it if he cares? She gave a faint, bitter laugh. Not really. I got up. Couldn't stand there anymore. Couldn't share the same space with her. I went into the kitchen, filled a water glass, and stood at the window, gazing out onto the black street. My reflection in the water was different, older, tense. She was speaking behind me. "What are you going to do?" I turned and wasn't entirely certain what was happening, but I did know this. I was not staying here with Lena any longer. "You don't get to talk me down," I said to her. "You don't get to reel me back in on half apologies and half-hearted excuses. I put everything in this, in you, and you couldn't even give me honesty." She was crying. I was very close to telling her that I cared. I went up to my bedroom, took a duffel bag, and started stuffing some clothes into it. I had no idea where I was going. Maybe to a friend's place, maybe to a hotel. I just needed to get out. She followed me to the door, pleading. "Please," she said, "stay. We can talk tomorrow. Don't go away mad." "I'm not going away mad," I told her, opening the door very wide. "I'm finished." And I left. The air outside was colder than it had been, or perhaps that was merely shock starting to wear off. I navigated my truck, sat inside for a while, and fired up the engine. My fists were tightened, too tightened. I had no clue what was coming next. I had no clue what this was going to do to the house, to the budget, to anything. All I knew was that something was broken tonight, and no pleas, no tears, could mend it this time. I didn't need to be anywhere when I turned off the driveway. I just drove. The divorce arrived sooner than I had anticipated. She never fought for the house, did not dispute anything, signed and left. I didn't ask her where she was going. Didn't matter. She came one afternoon to pick up one box from the garage. No makeup, no apology, no drama, just a nod. She didn't even look at me. Once she was out of sight, I returned inside and stood there in silence. No creaking footsteps overhead, no buzzing text messages at midnight, no whiff of perfume down the hallway, just me. And it was a breath of fresh air after choking it too long. I started rebuilding my life, piece by piece. The gym, work, hanging out with some of the old friends who hadn't gotten caught up in the drama. I wasn't calm yet, but I wasn't broken either. And then one night, I got a text from a number that was unknown. It was him, the man she was seeing. He said he needed to speak with me. I met him by accident and for nothing else. He was distraught, bleary eyes, wired. He told me that she had lied to him too, that the marriage was over months ago before it actually ended. He thought they were special until she slept with another man, 2 weeks after we were done. I said nothing. I merely listened. And when he asked me what he should do, I shrugged and turned my face away. Later that night, I stood on the balcony, beer in hand, watching the colors of the sky fade. It felt like for the very first time, it was truly over. Not just the marriage, but her grip on me too. I was no longer what she had left me with. I was what I chose to be after. For months, an unsettling feeling has been gnawing at me. My wife, Clara, had become increasingly withdrawn. It wasn't just the ways her political gaze blurred blankly when she locked herself in the office for hours on end, or that she suddenly became really into Pilates. It was the way her eyes grew dull toward me, that I was peripheral to her, like I was an extra in her life. The woman who officially dated between 8 a.m. and 8:30 a.m., who'd once asked God to let the cushions give way to furry, hungry bodies nestling through the linens, so slowly we hardly noticed each other's weekend lecture absences. I attributed it to the passage of time. 8 years into our marriage, at our snuggly suburban cottage, passion had given way to cozy predictability. But the silence between us had become more than peace. It was the stirring of a storm beneath the mirage of calm. Subtle clues soon surfaced. The phone that had been carelessly shoved down on countertops held her hand now like a brooch-turned turd. Court phone calls from the garden shed, unscripted book club meetings proliferate. Having my trust ripped apart, I chose to move, not angrily but cautiously. I planted a hidden camera in the den and rigged her device to work with an old tablet I hid in my woodshop. 3 weeks later, can't wait to see you. They cologne you in my brain. It was the sender's number that ran chill through my blood. It was my college roommate Ethan's. The man I co-signed loans for, comforted after Thatcher's DUI, called my groomsman. Now he had repaid that loyalty by getting involved with Clara. Patience became my weapon. I reached out to Ethan's partner, Sophia, to come up with a romantic gesture to tug at Clara and play dumb. I also booked a table at La Mer, a high-end seafood grill where I dropped to one knee, bowed down with a ring before Clara. Of course, Ethan, in defiance of better judgment, Lord knows, signed the brotherly bond he so loves to have rehashed, never to meet. It was an evening that seemed a little scripted. Enter Clara and Sophia, their laughter oiling the tension. Ethan and I made small talk until I raised a toast. To integrity, I said, as the blast-freeze peacemaker kept the snowstorm within hidden. My smile suddenly faded as I pushed a carbon paper folder toward Clara. Inside were transcripts of their conversations, pregnant whispers and graphic fantasies, laid bare. The other had stills from the camera that documented midnight visits to our door. The table erupted. My involuntary Sophia response to Ethan's fraud in crisp images. "You thought my restraint was ignorance?" I replied. "While you thought I was cleaning house, I rented us a place, I closed our accounts, and I retained an attorney. So I left and didn't turn back. Destruction behind me." Clara's calls filled my voicemail box. Apologies, explanations, bile. The sole message Ethan had sent, "You will never understand our miracle," had been deleted instantaneously. They had rebuilt, now their voices were gone. My loft was empty but filled with peace. I relearned old habits, sourdough trail running, and restorative sleep. Conclusion. From the ashes of that betrayal, however, I discovered one truth that cannot be unmade. Our human bonds might be what saves us, but liberation often arrives where attachment ends. Clara and Ethan were the ghosts of the past, but here I celebrate the how muted joy of escape. Some scars need not fade yet in revenge, but in outliving.